Hey everybody, Tony here from Boost Hit. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the brand new Frozen and Forgotten two-player box. And actually, I've got it here. We're going to be doing an unboxing. But before we get into that, I do want to talk really briefly about us coming up on our 600 subs. So we recently did a giveaway, gave some product over to someone who's been watching the channel for a while. His name is John. So John, thank you very much for that. Did a little subscriber giveaway, and now we're going to be doing another one. We hit 600, and when we hit 600, we are going to be giving away the K-Door Command Starter Set. So we were lucky enough to go get this from Steamforged Games, and what we really want to do is because we got this for free and we want to go give it to people. So when we hit 600 subs, we're going to be doing another giveaway, but that is coming up soon. So until then, we are going to be looking at the Frozen and Forgotten box. So I'm going to be doing an unboxing on it, and then afterwards I'm going to send this over to my good friends at Advanced Maneuvers. If you guys knew, I used to be a part of that channel, and they're going to be painting it up, and they will be doing a battle report with this here pretty soon. So that being said, let's dig in.
Hello everyone, this is Gaston from Advanced Maneuvers. We've partnered with our friends at Boost to Hit to do not just an unboxing video, but also a review of our experience with assembling and painting the models from War Machine's newest two-player starter, Frozen and Forgotten. As the designated Elf Bro, I was assigned the Nis side of the box, Lanissa, Benki and Sasha, Silena, and the Last Watch character unit. I'll step through what I liked, what I thought was strange, and the parts that didn't quite land with me. The good things first. These models are really cool. They're big, they're characterful, they're really unique, each one is very individual as well. One of the things that I have problems with when painting like Warhammer is that you have all these models that look alike, they kind of blend together. That's not at all an issue with this case. Everyone's a character, everyone's really unique, and you can always find something interesting, a little tidbit here and there, a little detail on each of the models. I really appreciated that they also have a lot of various textures. There's no large wide surfaces like you see with some of the Winter Core models. There's a lot of cloaks, a lot of billowing, a lot of these feathers on there, and armor. So between all these different textures, you get a lot of opportunity to kind of play with your palette, to try out new techniques. They take washes, inks, and contrast paints very, very well. And that makes them a really interesting thing. It's just kind of like a side project where you can assemble them, paint them, and you can get kind of like that opportunity to try out different ideas on all the same model. A few other good things is that I was able to assemble these without instructions. I found them very easy and straightforward. The naming on the sprue is individual to each model, so all the A's are for model A, all the B's are for model B, etc. I will say fair warning, I didn't use the instructions, but when I assembled the Winter Core SKS, I used instructions for that, and I found at least 3 errors that affected the order of gluing parts together. That's just something to kind of keep in mind. Now, when it came to painting, I didn't find any need to paint with sub-assemblies. I did leave the models off the bases until they were done. That way you can kind of get up under the cloaks and things like that. You can also leave the faces off of the war beasts, the lions, the tigers, if you want to paint the manes first, without worrying about getting any paint on the ears. Most of the capes can also be left off for painting as well, but just be aware of the assembly order with a model's hair. Things like Linus's hair is just crazy huge hair, first of all, and it does connect directly to the cape. So there's a couple of things like that. Silena was the other one where I had some issues with her ponytail interfering with where the cape was when assembling. But those are the only 2 ones to kind of mention. Color scheme. Obviously, I didn't follow the studio. I actually purposely choose color schemes that are very bright, very visually contrasting, because I have to put all these models on camera, and I don't want them to disappear on the screen. They need to be visible from 3 feet away. So this, for me, was actually a bit of a redemption tour. This is a scheme that I first tried with Dusk, and it didn't really work, and I ended up quitting the faction. So this was kind of my chance to try it again. I like that idea of kind of an autumn-winter theme, so I had the white for the snow, the browns to pull in the trees, and that idea of the golds, the reds, and the oranges of autumn. And I just wanted to mention this, that I'm reinforcing this idea that you're not tied to the studio scheme. You should be able to paint what you want, paint them how you want. They're your models, and I want to make sure that you know that you're able to get creative and get inspired with what you want to do. So if that's all the good things, now let's touch on some of the weirder things. The scale of these models is actually pretty crazy. I had to recheck the base sizes a couple times because their cloaks are huge, they're billowing in the wind, but that also means they take up a lot of space. There's a lot of overhang from the bases, And while I understand that something that's, an elf shape should go on a 30mm size base, they're small people, once you stack on all these extra details, there's quite a bit of overlap. And that's where I started like, should these be on larger base sizes? But it's just something to be aware of. The other things that you can see, especially if you're coming from like Games Workshop and their hard plastics, is you're going to see things like the swords are very, very thick. The cloaks are very, very thick. And I think this is more something to do with the manufacturing process of these, where they're not quite as dialed in as things like Malifaux and Weird and Games Workshop. And there's still, Steamforged is obviously still trying to learn how to do these things. The other thing that was very strange is the cloaks are huge. The cloaks are like 3 times the size of some of the actual models. It's just they're large. It's very noticeable when you're building them. It's a little unsettling. And so it's the cloaks, and on top of the, like, you have this kind of like Jedi robe thing where you have a robe on top of a robe on top of a robe. I guess it's like a trope. That it's something that is just very strange. And it's one of the other ones that's very strange is only half the models have scabbards. The rest just seem to kind of carry their swords around. So I don't know why you put in the time to do kind of that level of detail on one model but not the other. It's not, none of it matters. It's just as I'm building these things and painting them and spending entirely too much time on them, you start to notice this stuff. One of the other things that it doesn't matter at all, it's just very strange to me, is I went from painting like the winter core where you have the dog and everything on the dog like is fully furred, fully textured, and then I come over to these lions or tigers or whatever they are, and they have these anime style manes. And so it's very interesting for me to see kind of these two very different textures within the same game. That's very unusual to me, at least. Again, none of these things practically matter. They're just, as you start spending a couple hours painting these things, you start getting hyper focused and noticing them. A couple of the cons that are actually practical is the connection points on the sprues. I found them to be very thick, and they're often in really strange spots. So it kind of makes it a little goofy to clip the models out, makes it very awkward to trim them. There's one that like was attached to the lion's mane, where there's a place where these parts are supposed to be able to connect, and that kind of ties back into the model gaps are very, very real with these. The lions, tigers, whatever they are in particular, they split down the middle. If you have, kind of flashbacks to the old Warhammer Fantasy days where you have the horses and you have two halves of a horse and you put them together in a nice little seam down the middle, these lions are exactly like that. The mane does hide some of it. It doesn't hide all of it. You can see it a little bit with the armor, and you can definitely see it on the stomach. That's hidden by the base, so it's not a huge deal. It's something to be aware of. The other gaps that I found were along Silena's waist, trying to get that to join up. And Mordrith, if you don't know which one Mordrith is, he's the one who looks exactly like Kylo Ren. And I know if I say that, then you're going to know exactly who I'm talking about. His shoulders, where the cape connects over the arms, I found that to be kind of a fiddly place where I had a large gap with assembly. That was the only really big problems I had. I think overall, it's a great set. I think they're great models. I think they're very visually striking. I think they're very interesting. And I thought they were a lot of fun to paint. So I hope that this is able to, provide some useful information to you, some things to help you kind of do a better job assembling your models than I did, and just get you excited about them. Get that box in, get them painted, get them on the table, and have a great time playing with them. Thank you very much.